My name is Wren Walsh. I'm 27, and I'll never forget that Friday night dinner in our big Garden District house. We were halfway through dessert when Brianna slid a thick folder across the table with her sweetest smile. Just some technical paperwork, Wren. Sign it so Garrett can close his funding round. I flipped through it once my stomach dropped and I put the pen down. No, I'm not signing. Garrett slammed the table so hard the glasses jumped. You'll be grounded until you apologize to your sister-in-law, he yelled right in front of everyone. Dad burst out laughing. Mom nodded along, smirking. Listen to your brother Wren. Don't embarrass the family. My face burned, but I only looked up and said one word. All right. I pushed my chair back and walked out. The next morning, Garrett kicked my bedroom door open, expecting me on my knees. The room was empty. Every drawer, every shelf spotless. The doorbell rang. Trent Fletcher, the family lawyer, rushed in, face white as paper. Mr. Walsh, what have you done? If you want to know how one signature I refused destroyed everything they had, stay until the end. Like and subscribe so you don't miss what happened next. To understand why I just said, all right, and walked away that night, we have to go back 8 years. I was 19 when Dad's construction supply business finally collapsed after the recession hit Louisiana hard. The bank started sending foreclosure notices on our Garden District house. The roof was leaking in 3 places and the old SUV barely ran. My parents, Martin and Judith Walsh, sat me down one evening and explained there was no money left for college that fall. I told them not to worry. I had already figured something out. Within weeks, I quietly took over the mortgage payments, $4,800 every month, straight from my account to the lender. I never told them where it came from. When the roof needed replacing, $28,000 appeared in the contractor's invoice, paid in full. When the SUV died, a brand new black Tahoe showed up in the driveway the next weekend with a bow on it. My brother, Garrett Walsh, 31 now but 23 back then, just grinned, slapped me on the back and said, "Little sis, coming through again." Garrett had met Brianna the year before. 6 months later, they decided on a destination wedding in Jamaica. 40 guests, open bar, beachfront villa. The whole thing came to just over $90,000. I paid for it. They came home tanned and glowing, posting pictures everywhere, thanking Mom and Dad for the best gift ever. Mom and Dad smiled in the photos and never corrected anyone. After the wedding, they wanted a bigger place. I covered the down payment on a condo in the warehouse district so Garrett could be closer to the startup scene. When Brianna decided she needed a new Range Rover because the Tahoe felt too family, I made it happen. European vacations, Coachella VIP passes, private school deposits for a kid that didn't even exist yet. Every time the credit card bills rolled in, I logged in and cleared them before anyone saw the total. I always kept the same story. I worked remote tech support for a big corporation, decent salary, nothing crazy. It was believable enough. Nobody pushed. Dad would just say, "Wren's got it handled," and change the subject. Mom would give me that small, guilty smile whenever another large transfer hit their account, then look away. They knew the money was coming from me, but pretending they didn't made it easier to keep spending. Garrett started treating me like staff. "Wren, can you book the lake house for the 4th Wren transfer, 20 grand? Brianna saw this handbag." Wren, fix my laptop. It's slow again. I became the invisible safety net nobody ever thanked, because thanking would mean admitting they needed it. 8 years of that. 8 years of watching them upgrade their lives on money they never earned, never questioned, and never once considered might stop. That's why when Garrett slammed the table that Friday night and screamed that I'd be grounded until I apologized, something inside me finally clicked off. I wasn't 19 anymore, scared of losing the only home I'd ever known. I was done being the quiet bank that never closed. While everyone at home believed I was pulling in a few $1,000s a month doing basic remote IT support, the truth was very different. 6 years ago, at 21, I founded Aegis Cyber out of my bedroom with nothing but a second-hand laptop and an idea for a next-generation firewall that could predict attacks before they happened. I wrote the first lines of code myself, filed the patents under a blind trust, and kept my name completely off every public document. Within 18 months, we had our first enterprise contract with a Fortune 500 bank. By year 3, the company was valued at $400 million. Last quarter, the board approved a new valuation of $1.7 billion, and I still own 68%. Our headquarters sits in a converted warehouse in the warehouse district just 10 minutes from the Garden District house where I grew up. Every morning I drive there in the same dented 2012 Civic I bought in college, because a 27-year-old pulling up in a new Lamborghini would raise questions I never wanted to answer. I wear jeans and hoodies, keep my hair in a messy ponytail, and tell anyone who asks that I'm just one of the devs. Most days I work from the spare bedroom at home, so nobody wonders why I'm never around. My business partner, Ryder Coleman, is the only person who knows the full truth. He runs the public side, does the interviews, shakes hands at conferences, and signs the term sheets, while I stay in the background writing code and steering strategy. We agreed early on that anonymity was the smartest. Investors love a charismatic frontman. They don't need to know the real brain behind the algorithm is the quiet girl in sneakers. About a year ago, Garrett came to me with an idea for his own cybersecurity startup. He had mock-ups, a pitch deck, and a lot of confidence. The product was decent, but missing a critical encryption layers. I spent 3 late nights rewriting the core firewall module for him, free of charge, of course, because that's what little sisters do. He slapped his company logo on it, called it proprietary, and started shopping the deck to venture funds. That module became the centerpiece of his $90 million round. The contract his lawyers drafted listed a mysterious lead architect, third-party consultant whose signature was required for final security certification. That consultant was me. I never imagined he would try to turn my own work against me. When Ryder forwarded me the term sheet 3 weeks ago, and I saw my own code described as Garrett's intellectual property, something cold settled in my chest. The clause was buried on page 47, temporary irrevocable license of all contributed IP to Garrett's company upon funding close. In plain language, one signature and everything I had built for him would legally become his forever. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I opened the server logs, pulled every commit history, and quietly moved the master keys to a new offline vault only I could access. Ryder asked if I wanted to confront Garrett directly. I told him no. Let them think I was still the same Wren who paid for destination weddings and European vacations without asking questions. Let them keep underestimating me until the exact moment it cost them everything. That moment was coming faster than they realized. 3 weeks before that fateful Friday dinner, Garrett started walking around the house like he already had the money in his pocket. Every evening he would corner Dad in the study, waving printed term sheets and talking about valuation multiples, post-money numbers, and how this round would finally put him on the map. Mom listened from the doorway, with that proud smile she only wore when Garrett was the topic. Brianna kept posting cryptic Instagram stories about big things coming and tagging luxury real estate accounts in Miami and Aspen. They were already spending the $90 million in their heads. Ryder called me the same week. He forwarded the final investment agreement the moment Garrett's lawyers uploaded it to the data room. I opened the file at 2 a.m. and started reading. By page 47, my blood had turned to ice. Clause 14 on 7 required a final security certification signature from the original lead architect of the firewall module. That architect was listed only by an anonymized consultant ID. I knew the ID by heart because I had created it myself the night I helped Garrett. One signature from me and the certification would transfer irrevocable licensing rights of my entire encryption stack to Garrett's company the instant the wire hit. I sat back and stared at the ceiling for a long time. They weren't just asking for a favor. They were planning to take permanent ownership of technology worth hundreds of millions while paying me nothing. The plan became clear the next day when Brianna casually mentioned over coffee that they wanted to wrap up a few loose ends at the upcoming Friday family dinner. Garrett chimed in that it would be quick and painless, and that I should bring a pen. They scheduled the ambush for dessert. That afternoon, I got on a secure call with Ryder and our family lawyer, Trent Fletcher. Trent had represented the Walsh family for 20 years, but had quietly moved his retainer to me personally 2 years earlier when I bought out the firm's conflict waiver. I laid out the clause, word for word. Ryder swore under his breath. Trent was calmer, but his voice carried the same steel I had heard him use in boardroom battles. We mapped every possible outcome in 45 minutes. First, we froze the data room so Garrett couldn't make any more changes without triggering alerts. Then Trent drafted a short revocation letter that would kill the certification the moment I sent it. Ryder placed the $90 million term sheet on a manual hold, flagged for final diligence. Officially, everything still looked normal to Garrett's side. They would see the money as good as wired right up until the second I pulled the plug. I spent the next 2 weeks acting exactly the same. I nodded when Garrett bragged about the new yacht he had already put a deposit on, using a bridge loan against the coming round. I smiled when Brianna showed me paint swatches for the vacation house they planned to buy in Cashiers. I even helped Dad pick out a new watch he wanted to wear to the closing party. Inside, I was counting hours. On the Thursday night before the dinner, I moved the last master encryption keys to a cold wallet only I could access and scheduled the automatic transfer cutoff for every recurring payment I had ever set up for the household accounts at exactly 3:30 a.m. Saturday. Trent reviewed the final revocation language one last time and kept the signed copy in his briefcase. Ryder confirmed the hold was invisible from the outside. Everything was ready. They thought Friday would be the night they finally locked me into giving away a piece of Aegis Cyber forever. They had no idea it would be the night I locked them out of everything instead. Friday night, the dining room smelled of roasted lamb and garlic, just like every weekly family dinner for the last decade. Dad sat at the head of the long mahogany table carving the meat, while Mom passed the mashed potatoes around, with her usual quiet smile. Garrett kept checking his phone under the table, and Brianna practically glowed in a new silk dress she had bought for the closing celebration next week. Conversation stayed light until dessert appeared. That was when Brianna reached into the leather folio beside her plate and slid a thick stack of papers across the white tablecloth straight to me. "Just some technical paperwork, Wren," she said with that honey-sweet voice she always used when she wanted something. "Sign it so Garrett can close his funding round." I turned to the signature page and recognized the document instantly. Every clause Ryder had warned me about was there in black and white. I set the pen down without picking it up. "No," I said calmly. "I'm not signing this." The room went dead silent for half a second. Then Garrett's chair scraped hard against the hardwood floor as he shot to his feet. "You'll be grounded until you apologize to your sister-in-law," he shouted, red-faced, pointing straight at me across the table. "This is for the family, Wren. Stop being selfish for once in your life." Dad let out a loud laugh like it was the funniest thing he had heard all week. Mom put her hand over her mouth, but her eyes were dancing. She lowered her hand just enough to add, "Listen to your brother, Wren. Don't make a scene and embarrass the family." I felt every pair of eyes lock on me, waiting for the usual surrender. 8 years of automatic yeses had trained them well. They expected tears, or at least an argument. Instead, I looked Garrett dead in the eye, pushed my chair back, and spoke the only word I needed. "All right." I walked out of the dining room without another sound. Behind me, I heard Dad still chuckling and Brianna saying something about how I would come around by morning. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, closed the door, and started packing. It didn't take long. Most of my real life already lived in encrypted cloud storage and the warehouse district office. I filled one duffel with clothes, another with the few books and photos I actually cared about. At 1:47 a.m., I opened my laptop one last time from that room. I logged into every joint account, every automatic transfer, every credit card I had been paying for years, and ended them all with a single click scheduled to execute at 3:00 a.m. sharp. Then I wrote one short email to the household account they all shared. Effective immediately, all financial support I have provided is terminated. Do not contact me again. I hit send, attached the revocation letter Trent had prepared, and watched the confirmation bounce back delivered. I left my house key on the kitchen island under the little ceramic alligator Mom had bought in Baton Rouge 20 years ago, walked out the front door, and pulled it closed behind me for the last time. The humid New Orleans night wrapped around me like an old blanket. I slid into my dented Civic, tossed the duffels in the back seat, and drove away, without looking in the rearview mirror once. By the time I reached the loft I had already rented downtown, the automatic cutoffs had kicked in, and every bank alert in the Garden District house was quietly going dark. They thought grounding a 27-year-old woman who owned $1 billion company was still an option. They were about to learn exactly how wrong that assumption had always been. Saturday morning, Garrett kicked my bedroom door so hard the frame cracked. He stormed in ready to drag me downstairs by the ear like I was still 16. Instead, he stopped dead in the middle of an empty room. The bed was made, the closet doors stood open and bare, every trace of me erased. He shouted my name once, then twice, before the doorbell cut him off. Trent strode through the front door, still in his courthouse suit, briefcase swinging. His face looked like he had aged 10 years overnight. "Mr. Walsh? What have you done?" he asked, Garrett, voice low and dangerous. Dad hurried in from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel while Mom and Brianna appeared at the top of the stairs. Trent didn't wait for anyone to speak. He opened his briefcase, pulled out a single letter, and held it up so they could all see my signature at the bottom. At 3:04 this morning, Wren Walsh formally revoked the security certification for your funding round, he announced. The $90 million term sheet is now void. Ryder Coleman's fund has terminated discussions effective immediately and triggered a full audit because of material misrepresentations in the technical disclosures. Garrett turned white. Brianna made a small choking sound. Dad reached for the nearest chair and sat down hard. That same minute, Trent continued, every automatic payment Wren had been making for this household was canceled. The mortgage, the cars, the credit lines, everything. The bank has already accelerated the $28 million note on this property. You have until 5 o'clock Monday to cure, or they will file for foreclosure. Mom finally found her voice. "There must be some mistake," she whispered. "No mistake," Trent replied. She was very thorough. By noon, the first repo truck arrived for Brianna's Range Rover. Garrett tried to block the driveway until the driver showed him the court order. Dad spent an hour on hold with the bank president who used to play golf with him every Sunday. The conversation ended with the president apologizing but confirming the loan was now in default. Sunday was quieter, but worse. Certified letters started sliding through the mail slot. One from the IRS flagging unusual deductions on the old company returns. Another from a former supplier claiming unpaid invoices Dad had sworn were settled years ago. Garrett's phone would not stop buzzing with investors pulling out of side letters once word of the failed round spread. Monday morning, the process servers showed up. Brianna signed for a thick civil complaint accusing her of embezzling $4.2 million from Dad's failed company through fake consulting fees paid to a shell she controlled. The plaintiffs were ready to freeze every account she touched. By lunchtime, the sheriff taped an eviction notice to the front door, and yellow police tape went up across the gate. Tuesday, the moving trucks came not to bring things in, but to haul everything out. Furniture that had been in the family for generations disappeared into storage lockers none of them could afford to pay for. The landscaper who had tended the garden for 20 years simply locked the gate behind him and left the key under the mat. 72 hours after I walked out, the Garden District house stood empty, echoing with nothing but unpaid bills and the distant sound of tow trucks starting another engine. They had laughed when Garrett told a grown woman she was grounded. They discovered too late that the real punishment was watching an entire lifestyle vanish the moment the person paying for it decided she was done. 10 months later, I stood on the 48th floor of the new Aegis Cyber Tower in downtown New Orleans, watching barges drift down the Mississippi far below. That morning, I had signed a $300 million strategic partnership with one of the largest defense contractors in the country. The valuation clocked in at $4 billion, exactly more than double what it had been the night I walked out of the Garden District house. Ryder raised a glass of champagne in the boardroom. The team cheered, and I allowed myself one small smile before turning back to the window. My phone had been quiet for weeks, but it hadn't always been that way. In the beginning, the calls came constantly. Dad left voicemails that started angry, moved to bargaining, and finally settled into broken sobbing about how they were losing everything. Mom sent long text messages full of memories from my childhood and promises that things would be different if I just came home. Garrett alternated between threats and desperate pleas for a loan, any loan, to keep the creditors away. Brianna tried once through a cousin's number asking if we could meet for coffee and talk like sisters. I read every message, listened to every voicemail exactly once, and then blocked the number. New numbers appeared. I blocked those too. Eventually, the calls stopped coming. I never answered. Not a single time. They now live in a 2-bedroom apartment off Jefferson Highway. Dad sold his watches to cover the first month's rent. Mom works part-time at a boutique in Metairie. Garrett's startup folded the day the audit report landed. Brianna settled the embezzlement suit by signing over everything she had left and agreeing to 5 years of probation. None of them will ever live in the Garden District again. I still drive the same dented Civic to the office every day. Some habits are worth keeping. Kindness is not obligation. I carried them for 8 years because I chose to not, because I had to. The moment I stopped choosing, everything they thought was permanent disappeared. That is the only lesson they needed, and the only one they will ever get from me. To everyone who stayed until the very end, thank you for listening. If this story made you think about the difference between love and being used, drop a comment below and tell me your thoughts. Have you ever had to walk away to protect yourself? How did it feel? Share it. Someone watching right now might need to hear they're not alone. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.